Thank you. Hi, everybody. So welcome to the next webinar on JETs who get things done. So our presenter is Dan Lowe. He is a former country rep and former president of the New England JETAA chapter. And as many of you are probably already members of, he created the JETs Who Get Things Done Facebook group, which is probably one of the most successful social communities online. And we're going to kind of hear from him about how to build up such a successful community and sort of why JET Who Get Things Done sort of grew the way it did. So I'll hand it off to you, Dan, and thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you to everyone on the call for being here. I'm super excited to talk to you about what it's like to build an online community, and specifically 5 frameworks that will help and build any initiative as a chapter, thinking of them a bit more as a product. And I was recently listening to an interview by Orson Welles, and he basically argued that you can learn anything worth learning in a day and a half. We're going to learn 5 concepts in a few minutes each, and we'll have plenty of time to double click on any of those, and then I'll be using JETs Who Get Things Done as a case study of how those tie together to build a successful initiative that will tie into an ecosystem that's hopefully scalable, that can be successful for your chapter, or perhaps a collaboration with others, maybe even at a national or international level. So we'll understand the jobs to be done framework, identify problems to embrace, reframing problems as opportunities, because when it comes down to it, that's why we exist, to solve problems for our chapter members. Develop personas to serve, so we'll get a little bit into persona building. We'll establish design principles to guide us through a successful initiative, again, using JETs Who Get Things Done as an example case study, and then how to think about testing initiatives, getting enough done so that they're ready to launch without waiting for it to be perfect, so that you can start to ask for feedback from your members and that they can immediately start to gain value. And as Adam mentioned, JETs Who Get Things Done, I'm humbled to see several people on this call who are members of the group, as 671 members as of yesterday when I took the screen cap. And basically it started as a 2-week productivity challenge, because think back to April 2020. At that time, we thought, oh, this pandemic, it's going to be, some people were saying it's a few weeks, maybe few months. I want to use this time to surround myself around productive people. And I say that with an asterisk, because I really want to focus on healthy productivity. And I wanted to allow people a space to basically post a win each day. And that allowed people to kind of make it normal to get things done, even if you couldn't go outside at this time, but also normalize taking a break. So I was very, very clear from the beginning that if your win for the day is you planned to play video games and hang out and you did that, that's a win. If you plan to play video games and hang out and then pivoted, realizing, oh, I have a great idea for this book chapter I'm writing and did that, that's a win. So it was all about that collaboration and that ritual building, and specifically tied to the JET community as this, what I feel is a healthy community of folks who want to support each other and learn about each other. So it was kind of, I would say, a whole lot of luck. It was, for many of us, the worst situation we've ever been in, or one of the top 5, i.e. that being the pandemic. But I wanted this group to just be a 2-week fun productivity challenge, and then it was successful, so we did another 2 weeks, and then after that we realized, okay, maybe this is here to stay. So then we changed some of the rules and made it essentially just this place for folks to post their wins each and every day, and people are still posting, if not daily, then weekly, and a lot more people are commenting on each other's posts than ever before. So that's something I am personally inspired by, and we'll talk about how the frameworks I just mentioned in the previous slide could lead you to initiative such as this. So first framework I mentioned is jobs to be done. This is a super simple framework that just asks us to reframe the question we want to ask is, what job are we hiring X to do? And I use the example of a cup of coffee because we could go to a cafe and order coffee to hire it. I know the wording's a little weird, but we're hiring that cup of coffee. It could be that caffeine boost, that energy. It could be to help us get work done. It could be an entry fee, right? To have this place to sit down and study and be around other people, just to quote a cliche, writing their novels. It could be a place to have a date, right? And it's dangerous to assume that as a cafe owner, that folks are only hiring that coffee for one purpose. We had this really amazing Japanese tea house in Boston. It's the only place in Boston where you could get Japanese breakfast, which is something I miss dearly. But people would order their matcha and sit around all day to do like whatever they're doing, homework, studying, Boston being a college town. And folks don't typically order takeout $6 matcha, right? It's for the experience of being in the place. So that's an example of a misalignment in jobs to be done. And we can think about different events. And I will acknowledge that with JET to Get Things Done, yes, it's a productivity space, but it's also a space to be heard. It's also a space to make friends. It's a space to learn more about each other, especially thinking back to April, May 2020, when many of us, myself included, were feeling profoundly lonely, right? And this was that space to kind of get things done. Next up, we have identifying problems. So problems are my favorite thing in the world because they are an opportunity. And I work in product as a trade. And our team has a rule that whenever we're working on a new initiative where we're supporting other product teams, I work at United Health Group, talk to 12 people. We found, teams been around for 8 years, that is the golden number in 90% of situations. You get great returns up to 12, and then you start to hear the same thing in general. And I, as volunteer, JET alumni board members or leadership team members, our time, it's not budget. You might have heard about budget, that is super important, but our time is our most critical and limited asset. And you can divide and conquer this, but if you can talk to 12 of your members, collective, like as a whole, individually, but 12 in total, I mean, then that will really give you a sense of what questions do they have? Why are people really coming to events? We might think folks are coming to our Japanese language exchange because it is a great space to learn Japanese, but maybe they like, just using a fake example, they like that it's almost like musical chair style where you can work like a speed dating, like one-on-one. They might like more of that social dynamic rather than a group where you just walk in and you have to let's go up to people, and it can be kind of awkward for some people. So that's why that communication is key. From there, I would take those 12 interviews who you talk to and develop personas. And this can be super fun, something that you can do with your team. Can everyone see this whiteboard?
You're good. Yep.
Excellent. So I just did a really quick persona of Navi, who's a 27-year-old JET who moved to Boston. This is a fake person. So basically, if we interview 12 people, you can usually gather 3 personas that would cover 80% of the information that you gained. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it allows us to humanize different demographic data, different experiences, and just some stuff about her. But essentially, she's new to Boston, MBA student, recently back from JET, and she has several pain points. You can think of these as problems. She finds herself procrastinating during the pandemic, reverse culture shock. Boston's an expensive city for a full-time student. So from there, we might brainstorm as a chapter or as a leadership team some how might we statements. So just thinking of some hypotheses. How might we find free events for Navi? How might we provide COVID safe opportunities? And the one I want to call out here, how might we build a culture of productivity, right? This is directly linked to the pain point of procrastinating, and that would lead us into some we can buy statements. So you can have a lot of these, but these are potential solutions. And I know I'm going super fast here. That's so at the end we can kind of double click on where people find the most interest. But these are just some solutions I brainstormed. And one of them was that we could build a group dedicated to sharing daily wins. We also have creating an online study hour each week, or creating online events, or building an event calendar. But like an event calendar, that's great, that's useful. But when we think about all the other resources out there, and especially because this specific persona is in Boston, we could do another persona in upstate Vermont, right? That's a really different situation for New England JET, just using that as an example. So what I did from there was I plotted these 4 we can buy statements, potential solutions on just a really quick value impact matrix, which is just low effort, high value, low value. And in theory, again, our time is super limited. The most low effort, high value solution here to what is probably the most critical problem she listed was that building a group dedicated to sharing daily wins, because building a Facebook group takes 10 minutes, even if you haven't done it before. You jump on YouTube, you learn how to do it. You might, again, interview additional folks, kind of just, you can't, I'm not as crazy about surveys. They're good to do, but you don't get that two-way conversation. And then that doesn't spark additional questions from there. But the magic of a group like JETAA Who Get Things Done, or any scalable initiative like that, is it's the people participating in it that are doing the work. And I'm going to be honest with you, after the first 6 months, I don't post very often. I read everything, I go through it, but the group pretty much runs itself. I definitely didn't do it alone. Dustin, if he's on the call, he was volunteered as a moderator for about a year. But in general, any issue that's come up, I think I can count in 2.5 years, I can count them all on 5 hands. On 5 hands. Wow. There we go. 5 fingers. But they were essentially really minor, like, you know, hey, if you're going to post about a job, maybe just like let me know, or something like that. That's just really, really minor stuff. So this was by far the highest value, least low ever. It's not about being lazy. It's just about budgeting the time we have. And then that might create space to maybe explore doing that online study hour each week. But that takes that additional, you know, okay, you actually have to have a person on this Zoom call each week, right? And then if they can't make it, then they need to get coverage, where group is in its nature scalable. So from there, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but you can look at if your chat, I think someone can correct me, I should know this. I think every chapter needs a mission statement. If that's wrong, I'll stand corrected. But if you have some kind of value statement, mission statement as a chapter, you could look at, you know, JETAA USA's as an example as well. You might think of certain guardrails. And just to use an example, Squarespace did this when they changed from their legacy platform to their new platform. One of their design principles or guardrails was, whatever we do, it needs to value the user's time. So if anything slowed the system down, it was cut. It just didn't fit that design principle, and it made sure that it solved the most important problem. So for JETs Who Get Things Done, it had to enable productivity, right? It's more or less in the name. It needed to encourage daily use. So for the first 4 weeks, what I did was at the end of each week, I just wrote a post listing everyone who posted every day. And just to give kudos, I tagged them. And this actually comes from Annie Duke's book, Thinking in Bets. She said, this is a bad connection, I'm sorry, but it's connected to AA's success in combating addiction, because you do get that if you've been sober for even 24 hours, a week, a year, you get specific medals, you get social credibility or social, yeah, to say that credibility, but that's where that comes from. And there's you also see it in Duolingo, right? Duolingo's success is, yeah, it's pretty cool UI UX, but it's 1000% the fact that people don't want to break their streak is a massive reason why people sign in every day. Supportive community, already talked to that. And then I wanted to relieve burnout. So that's why I didn't want people to feel like they had to get a goal, like a chapter of a book done each week or something like that. It could be like, hey, if you need to take a break and you did it, great, good job. That's where, so those were the 4 guardrails for that. And then finally, just launching it. I'm not going to spend any time on this, but essentially, don't wait for it to be perfect. Prioritize your features, prioritize what it needs to be. I'm not saying it needs to be a Facebook group. I use that as an example. I never like to start with the solution. I like to start with the problem. And so the concept of a minimal viable product, like what can we get out there to start testing? So if you're interested in doing a language exchange, make the event. If 2 people come, talk to them, ask them why they're there. What do they want to gain out of it? What's worked for them in the past? What hasn't worked for them? And then iterate is pretty much. And then if you can look for something scalable, like a Facebook group, if all things being equal, I would definitely lean that way, because then if someone's I'm just using New England as an example, if someone's not in Boston or not in New England, they could potentially benefit from that. So that's me. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out by email. And of course, if you've not already, feel free to join Jets Who Get Things Done. Very much searchable on Facebook. And I believe Adam mentioned that these slides will all be available. And that Miro board that I also shared, that will be live for indefinitely. So with that, I'll pause. I've not looked at the chat at all, so there could be a whole lot of questions and comments, but I'll pause there if there are any questions.
Well, you've gotten a lot of love in the chat from people who have participated, so we might be a little biased, but that was fantastic. And I hope people will take Dan up on sort of his very intentional decision-making process, because I think there's an immense amount of value that could be brought to that. We are also at time, and we do have a little bit of housekeeping to do since this is the last session of the day. So we're going to rudely take attention away from you for a moment here, Dan. But after we've done our housekeeping, people can feel free to ask Dan a few more questions if he's willing to stick around a little more.
I am indeed.
So we are at the end of day 2. There is going to be a trivia Nijikai coming up at 10 past the hour. So Becca Gutentag of JETAA Southern California is going to be hosting that. So we do hope you can come to that. It should be fantastic. You can hang out in the coffee room for a bit before the Nijikai session itself opens. So the Nijikai does have its own session. Tomorrow will be the final day. So really excited for one more day of sessions. For the delegates coming to the Claire reception, just know that you will be able to purchase a meal for the Claire reception. The cost limit of that is $25. So you can buy a meal for the Claire reception then. Directions are on the Chapter Central website, just if you need a bit more clarification on the process, and certainly email the country reps if you have any extra questions about that. So double check that for tomorrow. But I think those are our major housekeeping things. Thank you again for a pretty intense day, making it through the bylaws, sitting in on discussions about spreadsheets and graphs. And sorry, what was that, Megan?
I have more bylaws.
Okay, well, let me turn it over to Megan then to do a bit more of the housekeeping. Go for it, Megan.
Sorry about that. I thought we might like to know what our results are. So my computer's having a mild heart attack. Let me just let that work itself out and I'll share my screen. It might not want me to share. I'll go ahead and give the summary verbally while my computer is upset. We did collect votes from all except for 2 chapters. That every article was approved. Extra excited about that. We did have 1 article that was not approved 100%, which is fantastic. We got some good feedback. So we had Article 4, JET alumni membership, had 15 chapters voting to approve, 1 as a not approve, and 3 abstaining. That includes our 2 chapters that were not here to vote. So we have some really great feedback. Area where there was some concern, which we discussed during the session, was just around making sure that we are clear in the bylaws that the chapters are not responsible for ensuring in their own member lists that a person is only a member of a single chapter. So we are going to take that back and look at that as just to make sure or see whether we can do anything to add clarity to that. We don't want to leave anything vague. I forget the exact phrase that Melissa used, but intentionally vague, I believe it was. We wanted intentionally vague, but not too vague as to where it causes any concern. So the next steps are going to be returning that to the bylaw working group. It is approved. So if we review it and determine that it doesn't need any changes, then it will remain approved. If we review it and determine that we do want to make some clarifications to that, it will be brought forward again for voting the next time. But as of now, we expect that all articles have passed and will not need voting again. We will also be reaching out to anybody that provided any comments in their voting form, just to see if we can answer any lingering questions or maybe gather some additional feedback. And then the next step will be our quarterly forum in January, February, where we will be voting on the second half of the bylaws. So the CRs, as soon as NatCon is done, we're going to determine a date for that. We're expecting late January or early February. So please have somebody in your chapter be earmarking that, as we do want mandatory attendance from at least 1 member of each chapter for voting. And again, the bylaws, all approved bylaws, will become effective on April 1st of 2023 as part of the new fiscal year. So thank you guys so much for reading the bylaws so thoroughly, bringing some really amazing questions and submitting your votes. If you have any questions, reach out to Melissa or I. We're happy to follow up with you.
Thank you so much. And I think with that wraps up the last session. If people want to stick around a little more to ask Dan a few questions, go for it. I know he'd be very happy. And I can de-spotlight myself too, I think. So Dan will be happy to answer some extra questions if you'd like. And we will see you guys at the Nijikai, come one, come all. I bet you will learn things about Japan you never knew. Thanks again, Dan, so much for being here. That was a fantastic session. And have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. And if you have a question, you can just kind of start speaking or raise your hand or throw it in the chat.
Hey, Dan, how are you doing?
Good, good.
My question is,